Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the unfiltered mental health podcast dedicated to all the things no one wants to talk about in real life. It is September 2nd, which is Labor Day. The last time I recorded, I was just about to go to Virginia to see my family, and a lot has happened since then. The trip went really well. It was so good to be with all 6 of my siblings for the first time in years. We had a lot of fun. I got to hang out with my younger siblings in particular. When I left the house at 18, they were all super, super young. So now they're all adults and so cool and well-adjusted. Like, how does that even happen? It was also stressful being with my family, as I'm sure many of you can imagine. But all in all, it was a good trip. Obviously, I recorded an amazing podcast episode with my sister-in-law, Abby, which you will hear very soon. But before I launch into that, I wanted to share something that's happened since I got back, which is I finally got a new job. I have been working for the same coffee company for 6 years, and they've treated me really well, but having just completed my bachelor's degree, it was time for a change, and I've been job searching on and off since I moved to Seattle, but finally, last week, I was able to land a marketing job with a catering company, so I'm really excited to be starting this new chapter in my life. My first day of training is tomorrow, and I'm a little nervous, but mostly excited. I'll let you guys know how it goes for sure. But yeah, this week's episode is a fun one. Abby will be talking about her Filipino background and what it was like growing up in that culture and how mental health was discussed and a bunch of other fun stuff. We give you guys a challenge at the end of the episode, so you're going to want to stay tuned to hear that. Whatever your Labor Day plans are, I hope you guys stay safe and have fun, but not too much fun because otherwise tomorrow will be a rude awakening. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I really hate summer, so September is one of my favorite months because it marks the end of the hot, nasty season. And call me basic, but I'm just really excited for sweaters and hot soup and turning my heater on and all that good stuff. Let me know if you agree. Are you team summer or team fall? Maybe I should make a poll in my Instagram because, that's definitely a relevant topic to mental health, right? Anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And as always, feel free to hit me up if you have a topic you want to hear about, if you have any thoughts about an episode, or if you just want to say hi. All right, here is my conversation with Abby. So yeah, it's recording.
Hi, this is Abby. Do I introduce myself?
Oh, I was going to introduce you, but if you want to jump the gun, that's fine.
Oh, no, you can introduce me.
Well, now I feel like I'm on the spot.
Well, I feel like I'm on the spot.
Okay, fair enough. So Abby is my sister-in-law.
Hi. I married her first brother.
2 years ago, as of yesterday.
Yes, but we met 4 years ago in college.
So I've known Abby a couple years, but only recently been getting to know you pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely started, when I met Andrew, he already told me all about all his siblings, and I actually had to learn all of you guys.
There's 6 of us, by the way.
Yeah, so he was telling me, the first few weeks we started dating, hey, I have 6 other siblings, and okay, so who are they and what are their names and who, what are they like? And Andrew told me, Andrew's my husband, his brother, his sister.
Andrew is the brother below me in the birth order. He's married to Abby.
He's child number 2, so I married child number 2, and Christina is child number 1.
Yeah.
So when I met Andrew and he was telling me about you, he was describing you as the cool older sister he looked up to and
oh my god,
the motorcycle riding badass. And I was oh my god, I want to meet her someday. And then when we finally did, I was so excited, but I was a little nervous. And then
found out that I'm just a mess.
No, you're a cool mess, but who isn't a mess?
True that.
We're all wonderful messes.
You're already dropping pearls of wisdom.
If you're not a mess, then are you really a person?
That's true.
You see somebody on the street and they're you talk to them and they're they don't have a personality, and it's who are you?
Okay, so I've been living in Seattle for 8 months now, and one thing I've noticed is that everyone is polite but not friendly. Like, everyone's nice in a pretty fake passive-aggressive way.
Yeah, like, they try to get by the day without, like, getting into conflict with people.
Yeah, it's kind of unsettling, because I have lived many years in the South where it's the opposite.
Like, the Southern hospitality thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in the South for a while, too. Like, to give myself some background, like, I'm Filipino, so I was born in the Philippines, and then I moved to the States when I was 5. But I grew up in, like, Chester, Virginia, which is, like, in the middle of nowhere. It's, like, the suburbs. And it was kind of, like, that area where you would go to a neighborhood and you'd see everyone who would speak in, like, that Southern drawl and have that, like, Southern hospitality kind of personality. But then you'd go to a different neighborhood and it would just be, like, all the ethnicities. Like, you'd find, like, the Filipino ethnicities, like, the Mexican ethnicities. It's, like, the hot pot of the suburbs, but with, like, Southern people.
Did you feel like people were pretty transparent?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I grew up there. Like, growing up with, like, Filipino parents, like, when I came here, I didn't know a lot of English. And when you are a foreigner, like, an immigrant, and you don't know English, but, like, you start at a young age, they make you go through this thing called ESL, which is called English as a Second Language. Mm-hmm. And what it is they try to help you, like, understand English, but I don't know, like, how it worked, because I remember when I was going through it, I was the only Filipino girl, and, like, everyone else in my class were, like, Mexican. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that worked. Like, they didn't know any Filipino. So, like, with the public education system, there's not really a lot you can do in terms of, like, incorporating everyone with, like, special needs and, like, disabilities and, like, special, like, language.
Right, especially if it's a smaller community like that, mm-hmm. where there might be only one Filipino child.
But the thing is, where I grew up in Chesterfield County, which is a big-ass county, which, okay. Like, so there's, like, let me see, like, there's, like, 13 elementary schools, like, 14 middle schools, like, 7 high schools. So, like,
so they should have had a program in place.
It was pretty good, but, I mean, this was 2002. So this was, like, right after 9/11, and everyone was kind of wary of immigrants at that point. Like,
right.
My family and I were lucky even to just get visas to just live here, because how we went through the process was, like, my aunt, or my great aunt, I guess, my dad's aunt, she was already living in Virginia. So what they do is, my understanding is, they get a visa for their family member to come to the United States. And we would get a green card, I think, and then we would be in the process of getting citizenship. So that's what my family did, and I didn't get a citizenship until I was 15, so it took 10 years.
Damn.
But it's also really expensive, so I think we could have gotten it faster, but we just didn't have enough money for it.
So you have to pay to expedite the process.
Yeah, you have to be living in the States for at least 5 years, but that was back then. I don't know what they are like now. Okay. So back then, when I got my citizenship, I was 15, but I think the minimum you have to be a resident is 5 years, and then you can start the process of citizenship. I didn't really have to do much because I was, like, a minor, so mm-hmm. I think it's, like, different. But for my parents, they had to, like, take a test of, like, this history test, or, like, I don't know, it's like a patriotic test, which,
I've
like,
heard about this
it's
test.
Kind of really creepy, like, the way they do it, because my mom had to study about, like, the presidents and the history and, like, all, like, the quote-unquote, like, good stuff that happened in the United States. And not, like, nothing they had to memorize were about, like,
the genocide,
the slavery, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, the tobacco, no. Like, they just had to know, like, who's George Washington, who's Abraham Lincoln. They just had to take, like, a really quick test, and then if they pass, then they can swear in and be a citizen.
Honestly, I'm not surprised, because that's pretty much how the public school system works.
It is.
And also, I can't imagine it's gotten any better since 2002.
Yeah, and, like, the thing with American public education is, like you were homeschooled.
Right.
So basically, like, your parents could pick whatever they wanted you to learn, as long as it was in the bounds of what was required.
Yeah.
But, like, in the public school system, like, they could do basically the same thing, only they had more requirements. And obviously, like, there was a lot of parents. Like, it's, like, a more under scrutiny. Like, with private schools, I think they have a lot more freedom of what education they want, as long as the parents want it. But with the public schools, they have to, it's a lot of bureaucracy, because it's a public system, so it's like the federal government is involved, the public education system is involved. So what you are learning is not what the government doesn't want you learning, then you don't learn it.
Gotcha.
Like, for example, I remember it was a requirement in my high school that in the public school, before you graduated high school, that you had to take economics.
Economics seems like something that should be taught to everyone.
It is, and I think I learned a lot of important stuff in economics, but the thing is, like, it was like playing house. Like, here's a laissez-faire, like, here's a democracy, like, here's a socialist kind of, like, economy, like, and this is what we do, and here's the type of banks. But, like,
I vaguely remember that.
They don't teach you how to balance a checkbook. They don't tell you how to budget. They don't tell you how to, like, actually make a bank account. Like, it's kind of, like, up to whoever's raising you.
Which is a terrifying thought.
It is so terrifying because, let me tell you, like, my parents were not the smartest with money.
Okay, wait. So...
Okay, this is, like, going on a tangent.
I know, I love it, but we need to... stay focused.
Okay, well, like, I'm totally leading up to, like, my history.
Okay.
So I went through the public education system, and like I said, it's, like, really bureaucratic. So whatever, like, I learned was what the government wanted me to know. Also, growing up in an Asian household, I already knew what was happening with the world, and it didn't help the fact that, like, I was a first-generation immigrant.
Right.
So my parents lived in the Philippines. Like, everyone in my family is Filipino. I'm a full-fledged Filipino, but, like, my English, I learned basically from the beginning, so that's why, like, you don't really hear an accent from me, and when people talk to me, they're like, oh, you have such a great English accent, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess it's because I grew up here. It's just, like, growing up in America as a first-generation Filipino, and just, like, a non-white Caucasian person, especially as a woman.
In the South
as a woman. I had an older brother, and he was about, like, a year and a half older than me, that he was a man. And Filipino households, or at least in my family, I felt like my mom, no matter what I did, she preferred my brother.
And that's a Filipino thing?
I think it's just an Asian thing in general. Okay. But just for my family, like, every family is different, like, a little bit, but, like, the cultural aspect is the male firstborn son is always preferred. Because, you know, they carry on the family name and stuff like that. And, like, the woman doesn't. And, like, you know, just years and years of misogyny. Like, the woman was basically, like, sold off. And, like, historically, she was an object. Yeah. My mom wasn't very progressive. Like, she was very traditional. Like, she still used, like, banana leaves when I was sick. Like, she would use, like, I don't know if like, this is a Filipino thing, but she would, like, use a Vicks Vapor Rub whenever I got sick. Like, oh, I have a headache, well, yes, let's use Vapor Rub on that. Like, I have a cold, like, let's use Vapor Rub on that.
I have an aunt who uses that, but she is not Filipino.
I mean, it's just like that kind of thing,
like home remedies and stuff like that.
So she did not know, like, what was right and wrong. It was just what she was taught. She wasn't open at all when I was growing up, and, like, I mean, that's changed now, but I'll get to that later.
Okay. You're such a good storyteller. I love it. I, like, don't have to do any work. I'm just like, I'm also really curious to just listen to you talk, because, like I said, I don't know a ton about your, like, background.
Yeah.
So
and,
this
like,
is really fun for me.
Yeah, and actually it's really fun telling, because, like, you know, when people ask you how you, like, where you're from, you know, when someone says, like, I noticed, like, you're Asian, like, what kind of Asian are you? Like,
wait, you've had people say that to you?
Well, actually, I don't mind it. It's actually kind of nice, because it's not them assuming. Like, they actually just genuinely want to know, like, where you're from. Okay. So, like, it's nice to know when people are like, hey, like, where are you from? Like, I really am curious. Are you Chinese? Are you Japanese? I'm like, oh, I'm Filipino. And then, like, the conversation starts from there. And it's, like, a great conversation starter. And I don't think it's racist at all, but people are afraid nowadays because...
I mean, you should be able to define that conversation, though.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay, anyway. So, like, growing up, my mom preferred my older brother. All my life, I just had to, like, be better just to be on the same level as him. I had to get straight A's all throughout school, and I did. And whenever I even got, like, a less than an A, I would get heavily, like, scolded and, like, you should study more, like, you should be like your brother more. But the thing is, like, he was a homebody. Like, he played video games all the time, he was overweight, and he generally did not want to do anything in his life. And
I'm guessing he didn't get good grades.
He still doesn't. He gets okay grades.
But they didn't hold him to the
like,
same standard.
He got B's and A's, but, like, when he got a C, like, she'd be like, oh, you'll do better next time. Like, don't worry about it. But whenever, like, God forbid I got a C, like, it was, like, the worst thing that could happen to me. And also, like, I wanted to do a lot of things when I was younger, but we didn't have a lot of money.
Like extracurricular stuff?
Yeah, like, so my brother did a lot of other stuff, like, outside of school. Like, he did karate, or, like, taekwondo, I think, and he played clarinet, he was in band, he did ROTC in high school. But me, like, I didn't do anything. Like, I did 1 year swimming in 3rd grade, and that was it. Like, it was just, like, all about him growing up. It just,
like, they had to pick where their resources were diverted, and that's the worthy
exactly
place to put it.
Yeah, like, it's like, okay, so we have 2 children. I have a son and a daughter, but I think my son is more important than her, so we're gonna put all our effort into him so he can be, like, the family man.
I can't imagine the toll that took on your self-esteem.
It was a lot, and just my self-confidence and my self-worth was all because I was a woman and I was a second-born. Like, I just tried my best to just be the best I could. And I made friends. Like, I was a very sociable person.
I was just about to ask, like, what were you like as a kid?
I was a very, like, excitable child. I was very extroverted. I made a lot of friends at elementary school. And then, I don't know why, but, like, for some reason, when I hit puberty, everything changed.
No, it's not an easy time for anyone to begin with, but then paired with what you were going through.
So, when I hit puberty, it was, like, everything changed after that. Like, my mom she would always criticize me, like, and I was growing, like, I had, like, acne, like, I was, like, getting boobs, and, like, my butt was getting bigger, and, like, all that fun stuff, and, like, it wasn't like I was getting fat, it was I was getting bigger, and my clothes weren't fitting.
Which is normal.
And so, since we didn't have a lot of money, like, I couldn't get new clothes. Oh, man. So I'd always have to wear, like, the clothes I had the year before, but since I was going through puberty, it felt like I was fat.
No.
Because I wasn't fitting into any more of them, and my mom really noticed that, and she said, like, Abby, you're getting fat, like,
oh my God.
You need to lose weight, like, you're getting acne, like, you need to eat healthier. I'm like, but you're the one feeding me.
Yeah.
You're the one feeding me.
You're a high schooler, you literally don't have any control.
No, I started puberty when I was in 5th grade.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah, so, like, I was going through that in middle school.
Yeah, even less control then.
I know, and so, like, after that, like, I tried to make friends, but it was just, like, an awkward time in my life. And even more awkward because, like, I didn't know what was happening, and my parents, like, didn't know, like, what to do because it was, like, obviously, like, they were in America, they had their own issues, like, they were working 24/7, and as soon as, like, we were old enough to not have a babysitter, like, we were just, like, left alone in the house, like, all the time.
Where did your dad fit into all this?
My dad, like, he did the best he could. Like, he wasn't as overbearing as my mom. And the thing is, like, in Filipino culture, like, in Asian culture, like, the man is in charge. But for some reason in my family, my mom was in charge. So, like, he was kind of a yes man.
Okay.
And I grew up thinking, like, oh, my mom is in charge. It felt like my dad was just there to make the money, and then he would come home and sleep. And, like, I love my dad. Like, anytime he had a day off, like, when I was a kid, it was, like, the most fun. But also, like, I think, like, as time went on, he just got, like, really tired, like, in his life. Mm-hmm. Like, you know how, like, when you work just nonstop, even for a month, like, you're just so tired and you can't do anything. You just want to go home, eat, and sleep.
Yeah.
There were, like, those golden times when he wouldn't do that. Like, he would be, like, happy and everything. But most of the time, he wasn't really there. Like, he was there, like, for dinners and stuff, but, like, you could tell, like, he wasn't there. Like,
right, he wasn't present.
Yeah, for a long time, he was a correction officer at a federal prison. Or a state prison, I mean. So, state prisons, that's where, like, the convicted murderers are, like, all that stuff. Like, it's not, like, a federal thing. The federal prison.
The states all have their own rules about that.
The states have their own rules, but it's also, like, really bad people end up there.
Okay.
So, as a correction officer, like, your job is to escort them in and out of their cells. Like, you have to oversee the free time when they're not in their cells. And you can, like, imagine the toll that takes on a person. Just day by day, they would go and see inmates.
Yeah.
And that would be their day.
Especially if that's, like, his introduction to America. Like,
yeah,
had
and
he been here before, or?
Well, okay, so my dad, he got a degree in the Philippines, and he got an English degree, so he's a very smart person.
Okay, cool.
But the thing with degrees from other countries is they don't necessarily transfer in the United States, because the United States has different like credential requirements, all that stuff. Even people who are like doctors in other countries, sometimes it's hard for them to practice in the United States.
Yeah.
For him, like, he had a background in that, but he couldn't really get a job here because he was like a Gen X, so he didn't really like computers. He wasn't open to learning that. I mean, my mom was open to learning computers because she had a background in computer science.
Okay.
Programming and stuff like that. But think about like those times back then, like these are those boxy computers with the floppy disk, like stuff like that. When you come to America and then just that one period where from like 2005 to like 2011, it was just such a progressive movement in technology. It's so hard to get a job when every job you're trying to look at, they're like, oh, do you know how to use computers? Can you learn? And there's such a high learning curve, especially with my parents who didn't know English very well.
Right.
They were trying to live in the United States. They didn't have a lot of family. And you're trying to get a job to support your family and all that stress on you. So my dad eventually got a job at the state prison, and that was his life. He was there for, I think, maybe 10, 11 years. But I'm pretty sure, like, he sustained a lot of PTSD.
I was going to ask, like, what kind of effect that must have taken on their mental health and whether they talked about it at all.
Yeah.
Because you definitely felt the effects of it, for
so
sure.
They never talked about it. Growing up, I knew it was there. But, like, I wasn't sure, like, if that was appropriate, like, if that was a taboo thing. Like, even in Asian culture, like, you don't talk about your mental health at all.
Okay.
Like, you're not really open to it. Like, you're open to, like, the spiritualness. And, like, my parents were Catholic. Like, I grew up Catholic. So, like, that religious aspect was there. But we never really talked about it. And I'm pretty sure my dad did sustain PTSD. And his job gave him free therapy because he was an officer.
Nice.
But he never did it because it was kind of frowned upon. Like, I don't know why, but in adults, like, if you are in therapy, then there's something wrong with you, especially in Filipino culture. Like, you don't want to talk about that. You don't want to make it seem like there's something wrong with you, because
I think that's definitely true for older generations. Like, our generation is pretty enlightened about that kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, we're pretty easygoing with that kind of stuff. It's just another form of medical attention.
Yeah, exactly. But for them, it's not. It's like there's something wrong with you, like you said.
Yeah, there's definitely a stigma
wrong
with older generations. In terms of my dad, he was there, but he was never really present. I think he was just tired of fighting with my mom, like, growing up, like, with all the emotional abuse. And let me, like, explain what that meant was, like, emotional abuse was, like, I would come home and I would ask, like, hey, can I hang out with my friend? And then she would go on a tangent about how I'm a disappointment and how I should stay home and study more, or how I should be more like my brother, or how I shouldn't even, like, scrape my knee because otherwise I can never get married.
What?
It was just, like, simple things that turned into big things that I never understood why. I felt like she saw me as something that would get in the way of my brother's success. It just felt like that sometimes. And, you know, as a parent, like, you're supposed to love your children equally. It didn't feel that way. So I would grow up and I would think, okay, like, I just have to be out of the way, but be successful so I don't disappoint anybody. Like, we would go visit other family members, like my aunt who got us the visas to live here. Like, we live fairly close to them, so we would go visit them sometimes during Thanksgiving or Christmas. And, you know, you have to talk about yourself to them, and you can't be disappointment. Like, you can't say, like, oh, Abby didn't get straight A's this year, or Abby scraped her knee, or something like that. Like, you can't say that. You just have to say, like, oh, my daughter got straight A's, and she's perfect, and she has friends. But if my brother, like, you don't say anything bad about him. And even if it's, like, something that's kind of obvious, oh, like, he's putting on more weight. Like, my brother fluctuated a lot with weight growing up because, you know, Filipino food is great. And he would stay inside all day, play video games. So he led, like, a very sedentary lifestyle. Like, I couldn't do that. Like, I would read a book, but I would want to go outside, you know, get some fresh air.
Yeah.
I wasn't really, like, in terms of weight or anything, like, body image wise, like, I never thought anything was wrong. But growing up after puberty, like, my mom, like, put into these, like, little seeds into my mind, like, hey, like, you need to be prettier. You need to be thinner. You need to be worthy, basically, of, like, being seen by family and friends and other people. Like, you have to be perfect in her eyes.
But then at the same time, she's not applying those same criteria to your brother. And
No.
so what are you supposed to, how are you supposed to feel?
I don't know. But so I think, like, growing up, like, I sustained a really big inferiority complex. And I still feel like that. Like, whenever I have a big accomplishment, I think, do I deserve this? Do I really deserve this? Because, like, I tried hard, but, like, is there something even better I could do that my mom would approve of? And it's just been so hard. When I went to college, and I was just away from her, away from my family, away from my brother, away from my dad, and I could just be myself.
Right.
Like, I could just internalize everything that I grew up with. It wasn't like, oh, like one day, like, oh my gosh, like I sustained emotional abuse all my life. Like, it wasn't like that. It was just kind of gradual.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to therapy in college, or?
I did, but not until like my sophomore or junior year. My freshman year, I met Andrew.
Right.
So we met on the first day of orientation.
No wonder you had to go to therapy.
No, but like, it's just kind of like when I dated someone, like dating him, like I gradually understood that, hey, he's different from me. And why is that? Why do I feel these things? Like, I would talk to him and I'd be like, I'm so anxious. Or like, I did a great job on this test, but why do I feel so bad? Like, why do I feel like I'm not worth it? And he was like, I don't know, like, why? And as we got to know each other, I talked a lot about my history, my parents, and he met my parents. And Andrew knew there was something off too. Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's normal for me. And he's like, that's not normal, Abby. Like, your mom should not treat you like that. And I was like, oh, really? Like, that's not normal? After that encounter, I kind of just like looked back on my life and I'm like, oh, like, that's really not normal either. The worst of it was when I went home after like a holiday. So I was dating Andrew and I would go back home. And this was after I realized like things aren't right anymore. So I would be home and I would kind of just get in the groove. Okay, like I'm home now. Like I'm with my brother, my parents. It's just little stuff I noticed wouldn't be the same anymore. Like things I tolerated, I couldn't tolerate anymore. I would get into fights a lot with my mom. And at one point I thought she was going to take me out of school because she was helping to pay for my tuition. Because at that point I was like going through FAFSA and like government loans. And, you know, you need your parents' like income level to like get that stuff done. So at one point I thought she like wouldn't help me anymore. And I freaked out because like I'm going through college, like this is like my dream. Like I was in nursing school.
So because you were becoming your own person,
Yeah, like she said to me one time, she was like, I don't even know who you are anymore. And you know what I said to her? I was like, who do you think I am? And she had nothing else to say after that.
Who did you think you were?
I don't even know.
Like, it sounded like you didn't really know.
I didn't know myself. And I still don't know.
Well, yeah, who knows themselves, really?
But the thing, like, when parents say that, like, it jars your life. They don't know who I am. Do they love me? Like, what am I supposed to do when your parent says that to you? It just took a lot of self-internalization. And then, like, fast forward, like, Andrew and I were getting married. So Andrew, Christina's sister, and my husband,
my brother.
My husband, your brother, we started planning on getting married our sophomore year of college. So between sophomore and junior year, we got engaged. And then it was a very fast engagement. And then we got married within 4 months.
Was it really 4 months?
Yes.
Dude?
We got engaged in April. And then we got married in August. Wait, so April, and we got engaged end of April.
Okay, April,
May, June, July, August. So 4 months. We got engaged and got married in 4 months.
That's craziness.
But we'd been dating for 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just kind of thought you would get married, but that's crazy how short of time that is. It did not seem that short of time.
I kind of knew I would get married because I like, really fast I knew Andrew was the one. I actually like went into college thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have so many boyfriends and all that stuff, but no, I met Andrew the first day and then we dated and now we're married.
When you were in high school living with your parents, did you date at all? And
I did in secret.
Okay, I was gonna ask because that doesn't sound like the type of thing that your mom would be cool with.
But they weren't like real, you know, because when you're dating, like you meet them outside of school, you go on dates. But no, it was like the kind of dating like you have while you're in school.
I mean, I feel like that kind of dating where you meet them outside of school happens like as an adult, sure, but I think it's pretty normal for everyone to meet people through school.
No, I mean like you date like going on dates, like actual dates, like going to football games, like going to McDonald's or something like that.
There was none of that for you.
There was none of that. Like if I had a boyfriend or something, like I could only see them during school hours. Okay. And that was the only time because I lived pretty far away from my high school.
No transportation of your own, I'm guessing?
Not at all. Like, the only times I could see them was if I was at school.
Okay.
At that point, I was already kind of, like, in my abusive stage. Like, I was a victim, and I didn't know I was a victim, so I was, like, blocking out all my emotions. Like, I didn't have any boyfriends in high school, really. Like, they were mostly middle school. Like, yeah, I had crushes in high school, but none of them ever really happened or anything, except during senior high school, I started dating this black guy. And boy, like, you can imagine how my mom was. Like I didn't think, like, you know how, like, white people can be racist, but no, other races can be racist, too. So my mom really didn't like the fact that I was even dating this guy. And we went to prom together. And he was a really nice guy. He was, like, nerdy. He would play, like, Super Smash Brothers every day. And he wasn't, like, a bad kid. Mm-hmm. But she just thought because he was black, he was dangerous.
Oh, my God.
She was stereotyping him. And I stood up for him. I was like, hey, like, he's a great guy, and he's just nice to me. We went to prom together. Can I just hang out with him? And she wouldn't let me, so I kind of just had to sneak and lie. My friend would cover for me, and we would, like, I would say, like, I'm going to my friend's house, but really I would go to his house. But it was, like, his parents were there, and he had a lot of siblings, too, and we were going to school functions.
And they were accepting of you.
Yeah, and, like, it was like this was normal. And even one time, like, I was like, hey, like, I want to go to this birthday party unrelated to the guy I was dating. So I went there and I told my mom, like, hey, like, can you pick me up here? This will be done here. And I would have to give her all the contact information of the mom. Like, she was, like, just controlling. And I didn't have a cell phone. So I couldn't, like, text her or call her, like, to say, like, hey, plans changed. Like, I'm going home with this person. No, like, I had to wait for her. And I told her, like, it would be done by this time, but she wouldn't come for a while. I was just sitting on the front porch, and this girl I knew, she was like, hey, do you want to ride home? I know your mom said she's picking you up. I was like, no, I had to stay here for my mom. Like, she's coming, I know. And, like, 30 minutes passed, and no one came, and they were like, okay, do you want, like, let's take you home.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was raining. And they're like, oh, do you want to just stay inside? And I was like, no, I'm going to wait out here. Because I knew, like, if I wasn't there when she was here, like, I'd be in so much trouble.
Yeah. And that sounds so fucked up from an outsider's point of view.
But, like, I knew, like, I was so scared. Like, if I didn't follow directions, like, I would be in so much trouble.
Which is, you know, totally abusive if you look back on it. But you didn't, it just seemed normal to you, like you said.
Yeah. So I felt the emotions. I just didn't think, I didn't follow through on them. Like, I felt sad.
Them?
Yeah, process them. Okay. Like, I felt sad, I felt angry, but it's not like I went up to my mom and said, hey, like, why did you yell at me? Like, I didn't feel good. I would just, like, take it, and then I would go home and go in my room and cry. Okay. And then I would, like, think up scenarios in my mind of, like, a great life. Like,
so you had, like, your own fantasy world you kind of retreated into.
Yeah, I kind of blocked out all the bad stuff, and, like, I would go to my room and I would be by myself, and I would just imagine if my life was good, or, like, if a scenario would change, like, if my mom didn't yell at me, like, how that would be, and then it made me feel better. And I think that's when I started, like, fantasizing about, like, if I was gone. I was a kid living under my mom's roof, and I, like, didn't have a job, I didn't have a car. I was just in high school.
Powerless.
I was so powerless, and I started thinking, like, what if I jumped out of a window? Like, oh my gosh, like, I know this is bad, but I would keep doing it. Like, I never would, like, go through with anything. I didn't do anything physical. Like, I never, like, planned anything, like, suicidal or anything, but I would think about it. Yeah. Like, I would think about it a lot. So, like, I would just think about, what if I had, like, a razor? Like, what would I do? Or, like, what if I just walked in the street and I didn't do anything and I just get ran over? I had suicidal ideation a lot, and I didn't think it was bad.
Well, yeah, if you're the one having it, it doesn't seem bad. Like, that's why people do it.
It was easy because I would go home to my room and I would think, like, this is my reality. Like, what would I do I was gone. Like, would anyone be sad? And at one point I was like, no one would be sad if I was gone. And I was like, what if I told my mom? But she's the reason I'm thinking these thoughts.
Yeah.
And also my brother, like, he didn't help either. Like, he was actually, like, they would gang up on me. Like, she would start it, or he would start it, and then she would agree with him, or he would agree with her. So I was like, internalize all these things and, like, think of all these thoughts that I never would go through with, but I had them. Like, it was my secret. Like, I would know about my thoughts. No one else would know. And so it was kind of like a comfort. And, like, if I told anyone else, I feel like I would be in so much trouble.
Like, you might feel like you're burdening other people by saying something like that. Like,
Yeah.
I think about dying a lot. Like, I don't want to worry people with this, but also sometimes...
Like, I fantasize a lot of times that I'm gone. Like, Is that good or bad? Like, you just don't say that to people because it's just not something you say.
Yeah, and especially when you're younger, it's really hard to articulate that sometimes. Like, you don't really
like,
know how to ask for help.
Like, what do you say? Like, I'm thinking bad things. You can't really describe it to someone and then they would help you. Like, how would they help you? Like, that's what I would think. Like,
at least giving you a voice, like, giving you the space to say those things. And
yeah.
to feel safe enough to say those things in the first place. I think that's so important. But you obviously were trapped. Like, you couldn't say any of that.
So I didn't. So
you, after you graduated high school and went to college, you started recognizing that your situation wasn't normal. That
it wasn't, and I had freedom, like the sweet taste of freedom that I could have. And college, like a private college especially, like, you're paying for it, so you can get the most out of it, whatever you want. I went to a small rural university in Vermont. So it was in the middle of nowhere. You had to drive at least 20 minutes on the highway, and then you'd get off, and then you would drive through the countryside basically, and then you were there. It gave me time to really just learn, absorb everything I came there for, because I went to school knowing, like, I had to do my best. Like, I can't waste this opportunity. Like, not many people in my shoes can go to college. A lot of first generation children, like, it's hard for them to get an opportunity like this to go to college and learn something and have a vocation where they're proud of. So I did that. But then, like, I also, in the back of my mind, I knew, like, I am so happy here. I thought, like, why am I happy here? I don't think the bad thoughts anymore, not quite as often. I had, like, low times, like I had a bad test or something, and I would think that. But, like, it was, like, almost never.
I was going to ask you if any of the, like, you said you had a lot of anger and sadness earlier, but you had to suppress them. Like, did you, when you encountered those same emotions in college, how did you deal with them differently?
It was actually because of Andrew.
Okay.
So he helped me, like, express myself. He acted like my punching bag. Like, I love you, Andrew, but, like, you kind of were that for me. I would express these emotions, and he would get overwhelmed because he didn't know what I was feeling, like how I would process things. So when I got angry, like, I exploded. It was almost like he thought I was going into, like, a panic attack, because, you know, panic attacks, like, you don't know, like, how they'll manifest. So sometimes I manifested them as I would, like, hyperventilate, I would cry a lot, or I would just get really, really pissed, and I would be so livid at him, and he wouldn't know why. And I would say sorry, and I thought, like, this is, like, the emotional trauma I had with my mom.
Wow.
Like, I'm literally becoming like her, and I knew, like, something had to change.
Well, because that's all you were taught. Like, that's how she dealt with things.
Yeah, like, when she was mad, she would explode, and, like, that's the only way I knew how. Like, I'm me. Like, I can do whatever I want. I have freedom, so I can explode on someone if I wanted. But, like, I didn't address it right away. It wasn't until, like, my sophomore year, getting married, and then, like, a bunch of stuff happened, and so I knew I had to go to therapy because, like, all those things. So I went to therapy, and it really did help. I didn't know what therapy was. It was just like, oh, just go in there and talk to someone, and then, like, you'll just keep going.
That's how everyone always says. You need to talk to someone.
You need to talk to someone.
But
and I was
it sounds
like,
so scary.
But, like, what, like, everyone was telling me was therapy was great and it would change your life. But it didn't feel like it. I went once a week, sometimes twice a week. One time, like, I had a panic attack and I had to go see a therapist, like, really, or one of the counselors at school, like, they were free. And it really did help. Like, I think going to therapy was really good for me. Things were able to be explained to me. Like, all my thoughts, all my feelings. I think these were the words that really changed me personally, was when they said, like, it's okay to have those thoughts. And, like, when that happened, like, I just, like, bawled, crying. And, like, whenever I had an appointment with my therapist at school, they knew to have the tissues ready. Like, they had, like, 2 boxes. Like, they had the little square ones. He would have them ready for me and, like,
nice.
have the trash. He was like, okay, here's your trash. Here's your tissue. Like, let's have this appointment. Like, have this talk.
You had a lot to get out.
I did.
4 years to make up for.
I did. And I talked to my therapist about my life, about my mom, and I talked about Andrew, like, getting married so young, still in college. Like, I had a lot of pressure. Like, I knew I had anxiety. Like, it's kind of apparent, but I'm not diagnosed.
Okay.
So they told me I had the option to be diagnosed for anything. Like, I would get seen and be diagnosed if I wanted that, but it would be outside the college tuition. Like, I would have to pay that myself with outside insurance.
So you weren't on your parents' insurance plan?
I was, but
you didn't want them to know about it?
I didn't want them to know, especially if going to see a therapist and getting diagnosed. Like, if they saw that, what would happen? Like, you know, like,
well, that's a good question. What would happen?
Like, even though I was in college, like, I was still dependent on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I never did that. And I really do want to, because I really want to find out what's really up with me. People say, like, oh, I have anxiety, I have depression, and they know what they need to work on.
Not all the time, though.
I mean, but it's just nice to know, like what is wrong with you.
Yeah, like, to have it on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Just to say, like, this is what I have.
Being validated, if you will.
Yeah, because, like, whenever I meet someone, they're like, oh, I have depression. I'm like, oh, okay, like, I think I have depression, too, but I don't know. Like, you just don't say that.
I mean, I have mixed feelings about that, because misdiagnoses happen.
Yeah.
And also, I think if you feel like you're depressed and it affects your life negatively, then you totally should be validated as someone who has depression. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. One of my guests in a previous episode was saying that, like, we were talking about her eating disorder, I think, and she's never been officially diagnosed, and she was saying how she feels like she doesn't really have a problem because no one's ever told her. And yet it affects 100% of her thoughts, all her energy every day. It affects her really negatively, but she still doesn't feel like it's real because no one told her that.
Oh, I know it's real, but, like, I want there to be a black and white. Like, I have depression, I don't have depression. I have anxiety, I do have anxiety.
I feel like you and me are really similar in that things feel safest when they're black and white.
Yes, because there are days when I'm really happy and I feel normal, but then in the back of my mind, I feel like a suicidal ideation coming on. I'm like, oh no, like, this shouldn't happen. Like, do I have depression? Like, does this happen with depression? Like, or is this just something that happens with normal people? Like, you don't know.
But again, then you're comparing yourself to other people. Like, maybe it doesn't happen with other people, but it's happening with you. You know? Like, what does that mean for you, Abby? Well, I almost said your last name. And by extension, my last name. Just gonna out myself right now.
Oh, just out us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so going through nursing school, it's a clinical profession. And I learned about psychiatry, I learned about psychology when I was a freshman. And that's when, like, I got opened up. Like, I need to talk about this. Like, it's a chemical imbalance, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it's not. Like, all these types of things, like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, all these things.
What was your first exposure to all that?
Was my first exposure. Like, these things existed. Like, it wasn't just, like, a secret myth or like something you never talk about. No, like, these things existed and they're in textbooks.
And college can be such a liberating environment for someone who's grown up in a more repressive one like that. Like, because it is an open-minded environment.
It's a scholarly environment.
Exactly.
Like,
that's exactly right.
Everything is written in text. Everything is in articles. Everything is in a database.
I think the big difference is that you're actually encouraged to debate and
encouraged to learn.
Encouraged to learn, whereas, you know, environments like the ones we were
like the public education system,
you're discouraged to go away from the box and like challenge the status quo. It
really opens you up just going to college and being away from family. So like, I learned about psychology, I learned about psychiatry and all the drugs associated with psychology and like all the side effects and the non-pharmacological ways you can help someone with a disorder. And I was like, well, I can't get these things unless I know what I have. So that's kind of like why I wanted to know, like why I wanted to be diagnosed. Because you can't go in a doctor's office and say like, oh, well, I think I have this. Can I just get like I don't know, like, tetracycline, please. Like, you can't say that. Like, they
Right.
have to know your diagnosis. They have to see you, and that takes money.
But that's something you'd like to pursue down the road.
Mm-hmm. Once I start my RN job, and I actually found out that my RN license just posted today, so I can start really soon. And once I get the insurance from my nursing job, I'm definitely going to pursue, like, therapy and, like, getting a diagnosis. Because, like, it's just nice to know, like, I have it.
Yeah.
And
sure.
you can always, like, recover. It's not, like, what defines you.
So what does recovery mean to you?
Recovery means, like, being able to talk about it. And because sometimes when I see my mom, like, I'm triggered, you know?
Okay.
Like, our relationship is a lot better now
I was gonna
because
ask that.
I don't live with her. And we actually did have a falling out right after I got married and we moved in together. And, so, like, we didn't talk for, like, 3 months. The last thing that happened between her and I was, like, she came over to our apartment, like, unannounced, and, you know, like, we're newlyweds at that time. Like, you don't just barge in.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
no.
it was really awkward. Like, I was in my PJs. So they were just there, and, like, they were like, why aren't you calling me? Like, why aren't you texting me? Like, we want to be in your life, blah, blah, blah. Like, you're, like, a different person now. Like, who are you? I'm like, well, like, and then this is the point in my life where, like, if this conversation ever happened to me, like, I was kind of, like, rehearsing it in my mind, like, if my mom did this again, like, what would I say to her? And, like, that point when she came unannounced, I knew what I had to say. So I kind of just, like, let out all my feelings, all the things that were unsaid for so many years. Like, you prefer your son over me, like, your other daughter, like, you're supposed to love them, like, equally, but you never did. Like, I always tried my best for you, but you always liked him more. And, like, the whole time she was just so shocked. Like, she'd never thought, like, she was doing anything wrong.
Are you serious?
I was just like, I am my own person. Like, you can't control me anymore. Like, this is my life now. And she was like, but I'm your mom. Like, we're family. I'm like, how can I call you my family when you treat me this way? Like,
had you ever told her how you were feeling over
No.
yours? Do you think she was honestly surprised by it?
I don't know. I don't know if she ever really, like, realized what I was saying was true, or did she really, like, listen to me, or was she just there so that I could finish talking and she could say her words.
So what were her words?
Like, not a lot. Mostly just crying.
So she didn't try to defend herself?
Well, she tried, but, you know, all the words I was saying were true, and she couldn't deny that. Like, she couldn't say, no, I never treated you this way. Like, what are you talking about? Like, she never said that. Like, she was like, she would always just say, but I love you. Like, we're family. Like,
Right.
we're family. I love you. Like, that's the only thing she could say, because what could she say at that point? Like,
so honestly, you think that was the first time she was hearing that side of you?
mm-hmm.
Point of view from you?
Because they were coming to our roof.
Right.
So we could kick them out. Like, it wasn't like she had to stay and I couldn't have a say in it. Like, this was our property. Like, we could kick them out. We could call the police on them. Like, there's nothing stopping us. So, like, it felt like I had that upper hand, and it gave me, like, that confidence boost. Mm-hmm. And it's not like I wanted to blast her, but she walked into that situation.
Yeah, no warning.
No warning, and just demanding all these things. Like, call me, like, love me, like, what are you doing? Why aren't you saying anything to me? Like, I called you. Like, I'm a newlywed. I'm an adult now. I'm in college. Like, I don't want to call my mom every single day. And what would we talk about?
Exactly.
Like, what would you say? Like,
it's like when you lived with them, did you talk to them all the time?
No.
Like, no, exactly. So why would she expect that to change?
Exactly. And it's just...
Which makes me think, like, you say it came out of the blue to her, but how could you not notice that your daughter is unhappy in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's just, like...
Part of me wants to play the devil's advocate and be like, well, maybe it was a surprise to her, and maybe she does feel like a victim in that case. Like, she didn't know, but and you did kind of spring it on her, but also, like, what's she done to change since then? Like, you said your relationship's a little better.
Yeah, and I think it's because of how she lives in Virginia, too. Like, we all, like, live in, like, the South Virginia, North Carolina area.
Okay.
But it's not like she can come every day if she wanted to. Like, she's, like, 2 or 3 hours away at the most.
That's a sweet spot.
Or at the minimum. It's a sweet spot. Like, she can come, but, like, it's not like it's easy. Just if she wants to drop by. So.
But after that, you went 3 months without talking.
Mm-hmm. So this was in October that year after we got married. So we missed like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. And that's like really important in Asian culture, just to be with family.
Yeah, I'm actually really surprised.
And so I had no contact with her, nothing at all.
And she didn't try to reach out to you?
No. It was kind of just like a standstill. Like, I said my words.
Right.
And
now it's your turn.
Now it's my turn to just have my way. It was either she accepted me and what I wanted and what I needed, like the space and the validation, or she wasn't going to be in my life anymore. And I was fine with that because I had Andrew and I had you guys, like my new family. Like, it's so thrilling when you get married because you have like this whole other family that you can call your family.
Unless they suck.
But like, you guys have like really been like a new family for me, which is really nice.
Aww.
And it's like such a deviation from my family because obviously like has a lot of issues. So I kind of just like waited it out. I was like, okay, is she gonna like do something? Like, what is she gonna do?
Well,
and like,
so what happened in the directly after you told her those things? I skipped ahead a little bit, sorry.
Directly after, she kind of just like cried, and then it kind of just like from there it was like really like silence, and then they just kind of like they left in a huff.
So your dad was there too?
Yeah, but he didn't say a lot. Like, he was just kind of there as a presence, I guess, to help her or something.
Were you mad that he didn't interject himself, or was this between you and your mom?
This was between me and my mom, but afterwards I like was mad at him too because he was always just a bystander, and he was a bystander at that time too.
Yeah.
I did have some like feeling towards him where like I wish he would talk to me too, but he never did. Like, does he love me at all if he's just watching his wife like talk to his daughter this way and treating their children this way? Also,
how much of that do you think has to do with culture? Like the men not opening up and not sharing those kind of things?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be curious.
I mean, and my parents were really unconventional anyway because my mom was like the man of the house. It was like a matriarchal family thing, but Filipinos are like patriarchal. I don't know. And I'm also like culturally separated from that because I didn't grow up in the Philippines. All I knew was where I was, like in America. Okay. In the school system, like I was learning what American children were learning. But I would go home and my mom would cook all this like great Filipino food, and she would talk to me in the language, and we would like sometimes do the cultural stuff, but like it was just like such a divide. Like, am I really Filipino, like, or am I American? Like, who am I?
Going to college and then graduating and being on your own, do you feel like you have kind of been able to own your identity culturally as well as an individual?
Yes, I do have a better understanding of who I am as a person, and I have realized that I am both Filipino and American.
Yeah.
Like, when I see someone who's saying like they're Asian American, usually that means they're either half or they're born into in America. But I never really saw myself as an Asian American until now because I always thought like, oh, I have to be born here, or I have to be like a half person, like a half Asian, half American. But no, that's not the case, and it's really helped me just root myself down because like I've married into a non-Asian family, and I myself am Asian, so it's like kind of finding the balance of things.
Are there ways you're gonna keep involving yourself in your culture going forward?
Yeah, especially in terms of food. Like, I don't think I'll ever not like Filipino food and Asian food. Just like knowing that I have this heritage, I can go both ways, which is really nice. Even though in my own heritage, like, it's been a really bumpy road. Like, even both ways, like American life and Asian life, I just had to live both worlds. It's kind of like I have a superpower and then I have like an identity. It's just, it goes both ways. Like, if I wanted to be American, I can, and if I want to be Asian, I also can. And it's just like, it's nice to know that I have two different places I can be right now. And in terms of right now with my mom and I, it's definitely been a lot better. And in fact, she's actually visiting me on Sunday.
Aww.
Because I just passed my NCLEX, my Board of Nursing exam. So now
Which is amazing.
Yes.
I'm so happy for you.
I was so happy because...
How long have you been working on it?
Since I graduated. So you need to graduate nursing school to take it. And I actually didn't pass the first time, so it was like devastating, and like that was a low point in my life too, and like I just had to get through that. After that point, like I thought like I wasn't worth anything, and I guess a lot of my mental health has to do with like what I accomplish in life, because if not, then I feel like I'm not worth anything. So I didn't know what to think of myself, because like people are saying like, oh, you can try again, and you can, but it was just expensive to keep retaking it. It was like $275 each time to pay. I was kind of banking on taking it for the first time and passing, and then when I didn't, it was just so emotionally like stressful, because first of all, like right now I'm unemployed. I just graduated college. I'm trying to get into the workforce, and I'm trying to get the license I need that I went to school for. And it's just this one more obstacle that I had to get through before I start working as an RN. So when I couldn't do that at first, I was like, am I really worth it? Like, do I have what it takes to be a nurse? Like, I don't see myself as a nurse anymore.
Do you think you placed value on your accomplishments because of the culture you grew up in?
In some level, everyone does that too. Like,
right.
People see what they've done in life and what they've accomplished, and they see like, oh, I'm doing so well in my job. Like, I have a nice apartment. Like, I'm settled. I'm safe. And then people are a little happier. But when you're not so stable, that's when a lot of things go wrong.
They have a snowball effect too.
Yeah.
Like, one little thing goes wrong, then it makes another thing go wrong, and nothing is ever just isolated.
Yeah, like if you have problems with money, then you can't get food, and then you can't get healthcare, and then you can't do the things you want, and you can't pay your bills. Like, are you going to have a shelter? Like, it's kind of like I've had to grow up so fast, because after college and getting married, like I got married at 20 years old, and most people would think that I'm stupid for doing that or I'm reckless, but no, it's just I knew I was ready, and I knew that from here on out, like I'm an adult and I can't just be sitting around all day pretending to be a little kid, and that's important to me. Like, I don't like depending on people because it makes me feel I'm vulnerable, and I never want to be vulnerable because of how I grew up. Like, being vulnerable is so scary, because...
So would you say being vulnerable is bad?
I think being vulnerable in terms of stability is bad. Like, if you are vulnerable economically, that's really bad, because obviously everything's not about money.
Yeah.
And
but it doesn't hurt.
But now that I finally passed my NCLEX and I can be a nurse now, like, I have more hope for the future. And I can finally start working and, you know, make good money and actually have healthcare and get the therapy I want and the care I want. And in terms of my mom, yeah, so she's coming over to celebrate my NCLEX.
I was going to ask, well, how did you guys end up reconciling?
I ended up getting a birthday present in April, and then I just got like a text saying like, I'm sorry, and then I kind of just ignored it. So she contacted me first, and then I was just talking to Andrew, and I was like, what should I do? Like, should I forgive her? It's just so hard. I was just at that point in my life where I kind of didn't know who I was religiously. Like, people are always saying, you know, forgive people, and that's like a Christian thing. It's a Catholic thing. I didn't know what to do, so I kind of just ignored it for a while until my birthday came in April. And then I got like a care package from my mom, and then it was just so thoughtful, and like she would write a card and say like, no matter what happens, like we'll always be your family. And I just been missing just that part of my life, so I like took the steps to like call her, and like it wasn't like I called her and then everything was hunky-dory.
Right.
Like, no, I was like, do you know I'm calling? Like, do you understand what I want from you? I want space, but I still love you. Just, I need to be separate. You can't call me every day. You can't visit just out of the blue. You have to let me know, because I'm not comfortable with you just coming to my apartment unannounced.
Yeah, because you are independent and you've worked really hard to be that way.
I mean, we've had a lot of good progress. Every time I text her, like, I don't shoot the gun, like, I have to reply right away. No, I kind of just wait a day, and I'm like, okay, what should I say? And yeah, like, it's just been better. But it's not perfect.
I mean, what is ever perfect? Especially relationships with parents. I think they're just ever changing. They're never going to look exactly the way you want.
Mm-hmm. It's never going to go back to how it used to be.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. But, you know, I still had good times, like, when it wasn't bad. The cycle of abuse is they love you, and then it's, like, the violent phase. And then there's this phase called the moonlight phase or the honeymoon phase where an abuser will say sorry, like, give you gifts, give you affection, and then it'll keep going. So I kind of broke that when I went away, and I realized that from here on out, I'm just more cautious about how things lead up, because it's not a black and white thing. Oh, like, I'm gonna be with my mom today and she's gonna act like how she was when I was growing up. No, it's not like that. You kind of just have to gauge out, like, a conversation and think, oh no, this is gonna go the wrong path. Let me just redirect the conversation.
Which, you know, is very mature of you. It's really easy to revert back to being a child when you're hanging out with your parents. Like, I'm visiting now from Seattle.
And it's easy for parents to make you feel like a kid again.
Exactly. Because when they look at you, that's all they see.
Yeah, they see, like, they raised you, and it's hard for them to see you as your own person and not just their kid.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, you've known your parents your whole life, but your parents have never known you your whole life.
Yeah, their whole lives.
Their whole life. Yeah. So, like, they've lived their life, and then they had you, and then
there's a whole portion of their life
where you don't know.
You don't exist.
Yeah.
Not only do you not know about it, but you don't exist.
Like, you never existed until they made you.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, like, I just have these existential crises, like, I was once a fetus and now I am a person and with my own thoughts. Yeah, nowadays, like, I don't have suicidal ideation. When I find that I do, then I'll immediately go talk to someone. And that someone is usually Andrew. When I have an anxiety attack or something, like, I'm overwhelmed, he, like, helps me breathe. And, like, he's just my person. Like, I think everyone needs that kind of person in their life where they know that they can go to them and it'll be okay.
Totally. And it doesn't have to be romantic per se, but I think, and, you know,
like, I go to my cat. Like, I have a cat and I go to her and she's just like, she just purrs and chirps. My cat chirps, guys. And I love her. And she's also that person for me. And I think my cat is a person, yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to say, I'm glad that cats are included in the term of people.
Yes, and dogs.
Yeah.
And also one time a turtle.
Okay.
Oh, and a hamster.
If you have a fuzzy breathing thing in your life, that's your person.
Or reptile.
Okay.
Or bird.
Your person can be whatever you want it to be, guys.
It can be a rock.
All right, that's stretching it. Anyway.
Just something that you can relax with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, like, no one can say, like, I'm all better now. Like, I think in the end, you just have to keep moving forward and realize how much progress you've made.
Totally.
And just stick to that mindset before you revert.
But also realizing that if you do revert, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and sometimes you need that. Like, you know how when you're having a bad day and everything just sucks, but you want it to suck, and you just go to someone and say, like, hey, I'm having a bad day, I want to vent to you, and then they say, oh, it'll all be better. No, I just want my day to suck. Just give me a treat.
That's one thing that I also hate is when you're, like, people try to fix you and they throw advice at you, but you don't have the energy to deal with that. You can't even comprehend fixing your life sometimes. You just want to know that someone is listening and understands what you're going through.
Yeah, nobody wants to be sad, but it's also, you can't be happy without knowing that there's sadness. So just, like, let me be sad or let me have a sucky day and then I can move on with my life. But it's just that validation that, yes, I am feeling this way and it's real, which is leagues away from where I used to be, where I would have that feeling and I would be like, this is not normal. So I've come a long way from that, like a lot of people have.
Awesome.
Yay!
Do you have any pieces of advice for people who might be in situations like you? Growing up in a culture where they can't talk about this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I would say just a lot of things are unsaid for a reason because no one has the courage to speak out. But if you think that your family is like this forever, it's not like that. I mean, my mom, like, she's more open to the fact that, hey, people have feelings and they want to talk about it. So if you're in the situation where, you know, you're Asian or whatever culture and you feel that you can't talk to your family, I mean, just bring it up, you know, like, hey, mom, like, I'm having a bad day. Or, hey, dad, I'm having a bad day. Like, I just want to talk and I don't want you to brush me off. And if they don't want to talk, then you did the right thing by bringing it up. But I never brought it up and it was just not good. With everything, just having the courage to say it out loud instead of internalizing it, and also having thoughts that you think are bad and then just burying it is not always good. Like, you just have to talk to someone or something. Bottling things up is never good for any situation, even if you're not thinking about suicidal thoughts. Just like having anger or any negative feelings and then bottling that up is not ever good for anyone.
Yeah, just tell your cat all your problems.
Yeah, I did a really good job of hiding my internal problems growing up. Like, no one ever thought I had a problem. And people are always surprised when they hear that, like, I used to think about suicide. It's just, you never know what's hiding underneath, like, a smile.
Yeah, for sure.
So just check up on people and say, like, hey, how's your day? Or how have you been? But not the shallow, how have you been?
Oh my God, I hate that.
Whenever someone says, like, hey, how are you? And then I'm like, do I want to spill my whole life and my whole mental issues? No, I'm just going to say, no, I'm great.
I mean, I work at a cafe, and there's been a couple times where people have responded to that question with, not great, actually. And it's always like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And it always, you know, encourages me to ask further questions like, oh, no, what's wrong? And there's been a few times where we've had great conversations, and then other times I get the sense that they don't want to talk about it, and that's fine, but I'm happy that they said that, so I know not to be obnoxious.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I wish more people could be honest about that kind of thing.
Like, that greeting is just, I think it's an American thing. And
really?
I don't think people, like, even in Canada, I don't know, like, in Asia, like, they just say hi. Like, hey. And if you're really prepared to hear the answer of how are you, then
don't ask.
Then don't ask. That's my advice. It's my pet peeve. Like, people say, how are you?
Maybe we should challenge all the listeners to respond to that honestly once this week.
Yes. If you get asked, how are you, even like at a cafe or a restaurant, then really say what's on your mind, and you'll be surprised how people react.
Oh, I'm going to do it too, and now I'm kind of nervous.
Do it for 1 week and see how it pans out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
This is such a whirlwind. I don't...
Guys, we were interrupted like
four times.
Yeah, we started and stopped this recording like 4 times. We had to run errands and stuff.
I'm wearing a totally different outfit now.
Yeah, it's been an adventure, but we're finally done, and I'm super excited that we got to talk about all this stuff.
Yes.
Right now, we're about to have a game night with
pictures.
All of my siblings.
Everyone's there.
Yeah, so 7 of us, Abby, and then my brother's bringing his girlfriend. So it's going to be crazy.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Yes, so we're going to do that. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and let me know how your challenge went. What should we call it?
The Honest How Are You challenge.
Cool. We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.